What are some of the dumbest crimes people will do? Let's find out, starting with number 6. It was a sign. A bizarre incident unfolded during a police news conference in Tampa, Florida, announcing the arrest of a wanted suspect who was on the run. As the Tampa Police Chief detailed the arrest of Howell Donaldson, a sign language interpreter named Derlyn Roberts stood beside him, supposedly translating his words for the deaf audience. However, what transpired was a baffling display of gibberish. Roberts, during the press conference, had made signs that made no sense, weaving a nonsensical narrative completely unrelated to the chief's statements. She looked more like she was acting out some children's song or something. The chief was providing a timeline of the crimes and describing the agency's receipt of around 5,000 tips before apprehending the suspect. Yet, Roberts' interpretation included phrases such as 51 hours ago, 0, 12, 22, 3 minutes in 14 weeks ago, confusing anyone who knows sign language.
As you recall, on October 9th, Benjamin Mitchell was 22 years old, and he was That was 51 days ago. On October 11th, 2 days later, 32-year-old Monica Hoffa.
The incident drew attention not just for its absurdity, but for Roberts' questionable background. A Tampa Police Department spokesperson admitted that he allowed her to interpret without sufficient verification, which seems like something that probably went without saying. Subsequently, it was revealed that Roberts had a criminal record with convictions for fraud over $50,000, fraudulent use of personal information, grand theft, burglary, and other offenses. Digging into her past, it was discovered that Roberts had a history of exploiting a Tampa private school fraud case back in 2004 when she ran the Sago Palm Educational Academy, designed for children with special needs and disabilities. Apparently, Roberts had stolen $350,000 from Florida's McKay Scholarship Fund and used it for personal benefit in a scheme lasting from 2004 to 2009. Roberts not only stole funds, but also assumed the identity of another person, Angela Darien, to perpetuate the fraud. She impersonated Darien to continue receiving state education money even after the authorities revoked funding for the school due to Roberts' criminal past. Darien, who had moved away and had no knowledge of the fraud, only discovered what happened when a state investigator contacted her.
Years is not enough for what she did to these children, what she did to the community, what she did to the parents, and what she did to me.
After her school caper was exposed, Roberts was sent to prison for 5 years before being released in 2016. Despite her criminal history and lack of qualifications, she somehow managed to present herself as a sign language interpreter at the police news conference in 2017. It's clear she must have known some sign language, but decided to wing it. Honestly, it was worth it for our laughs, Derlyn. We applaud the set of cojones you apparently have. Number 5. TikTok bragging. UK resident Rhys Callum Davidson got himself arrested after stealing 12 cars in a series of burglaries over 5 months back in 2022. His boldness reached new heights when he decided to flaunt his ill-gotten gains on TikTok, posting videos of the stolen high-performance hatchbacks. Because he just has to brag, right? The criminal activities caught the attention of the North Yorkshire Police, leading to the launch of Operation Zinc. This investigation aimed to unravel a string of car key burglaries that were targeting some locals. Davidson's MO involved breaking into victims' homes by damaging locks on doors and windows. Once inside, he would search for car keys and make away with vehicles parked in driveways or on the streets. The stolen cars included 7 VW Golf Rs, 1 Golf GTE, 1 Golf GTI, 1 VW T-Roc, a BMW M3, an Audi S3, and Seat Leon Cupra. Adding to the audacity of his crimes, Davidson went on TikTok to proudly showcase his stolen car collection, creating videos that featured the high-performance vehicles he had obtained. Unbeknownst to him, this would contribute to his downfall. In total, Davidson faced charges related to 14 burglaries, 12 car thefts, 2 counts of handling stolen goods, and 1 attempted house burglary. The court sentenced Davidson to 4 years in jail, an additional penalty to the 5-year sentence already handed to him earlier in the same year. The police managed to recover some of the stolen vehicles, while others had already been sold to buyers in various locations. Why these people need to brag about the dumb things they do on social media will never stop amazing us. Seriously, this guy could have probably just continued doing his thing unchecked if he didn't have some weird need for validation. Number 4, the crash scene. In an attempt to secure an insurance payout, Ghenoua Fadel staged a fake car crash while heavily pregnant, only to have her plans foiled by a nearby CCTV camera. The incident unfolded in a rain-soaked Sydney intersection with 2 strategically placed vehicles and a seemingly distressed Fadel claiming to have missed a stop sign, resulting in a crash. The footage revealed a carefully set up scam as Fadel, cradling her stomach, rammed her car into the strategically parked vehicle, while an associate of her husband, Jamal Gumrawi, played a key role in the positioning of the cars. The staged crash was part of an escalating national trend, contributing to millions of dollars in increased car insurance premiums for everyday motorists. The mother of 4 pleaded guilty to charges of not stopping at a stop line and publishing false, misleading material to obtain an advantage. Despite facing the possibility of jail time, Fadel received a 13-month sentence to be served as home detention. Crash investigators uncovered the plot, showing that the damage had been deliberately inflicted, leading to insurance claims totaling almost $70,000. The scam involved lodging claims with different insurers, AAMI and NRMA, but a forensic report commissioned by Suncor, AAMI's parent company, exposed the fraud. Fadel's attempt at a miraculous escape was completely undone by the footage that contradicted her initial claims and revealed the calculated nature of the crash. For her part, Fadel seemed to be appropriately apologetic, explaining that she was trying to get a bigger car for all of her kids and made a stupid decision. The moral of the story? Criminals should perhaps reconsider their strategies, especially when trying to set up insurance scam right in front of a camera. In an era where surveillance technology is everywhere, it's good to remember crime doesn't pay, especially when it's caught on tape. Number 3, the TikTok tutorial. A TikToker who gained notoriety for sharing tips on how to dodge train fares has learned a costly lesson herself, as she was fined 773 pounds and now carries a criminal record. The woman, whose identity wasn't released by authorities and remains undisclosed, posted multiple videos on her TikTok account, proudly detailing her strategies for evading train fare payments.
Always buy it for the next stop or just the cheapest stop. So, for example, if you get in a Derby, just buy one for Burton on Trent to get you through the barrier.
Her advice included sitting near the toilet to potentially hide from ticket inspectors, purchasing a ticket for the cheapest stop instead of the actual destination, and feigning technical difficulties or a dead phone to avoid scrutiny. In one video, she said she had never paid full price for a train journey, and she thought that with the prices going up, she would share her tips. Despite her confidence in outsmarting the system, East Midlands Railway and the British Transport Police collaborated on an investigation that led to her prosecution. East Midlands Railway said that the TikTok video served as crucial evidence against the fare evader. Lisa Scott Savage from the British Transport Police said she's pretty happy with the outcome, pointing to the significant penalties for those attempting to evade fares, hefty fines, and a criminal record. The legitimate fare-paying passengers, she noted, ultimately bear the costs incurred by dishonest individuals. The case goes to show that attempting to teach or share methods of committing crimes, even on social media, can have real legal repercussions, and it seems the TikToker's attempt to showcase her techniques ended up being a tutorial on what not to do. And how much money was she possibly saving here? Was the risk worth it? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Number 2, accounting errors. A former school board member in Miami, Lubby Navarro, got in big trouble after being accused of misusing over $100,000 in district funds for personal expenses.
We have some breaking news right now. Former Miami-Dade school board member under arrest and being booked into jail this morning.
She was arrested and charged with 2 counts of scheme to defraud and 2 counts of grand theft. Navarro had a long-standing career in Miami-Dade public schools, working in various roles since 2002. And in 2015, she was appointed to fill a vacant seat on the Miami-Dade County School Board. She went on to win elections in 2016 and 2020, serving as the vice chair for the school board. However, she resigned from her position before the term concluded on December 30th, 2022. The allegations against Navarro involve the misuse of district-issued credit cards for personal expenses, including vacations, food, clothing, and other shopping trips. It was only after her departure from the school board that administrators noticed suspicious activity on Navarro's credit cards. The district issues 2 types of cards to board members: a purchasing card for small day-to-day purchases and a travel card for district-related trips. Navarro ignored the limits on these cards, which included monthly spending limits, single transaction limits, and daily velocity limits. The investigation revealed that Navarro frequently requested increases to her spending limits, sometimes bumping her monthly limit up to $15,000. School board members are required to list their purchases each month, but Navarro faked reports to downplay her transactions. Navarro reportedly went as far as splitting transactions into 2 payments to stay below spending limits. Navarro spent at least $101,000 on unauthorized purchases in 2022 alone. The extensive list of items purchased with district funds included Apple Watches, AirTags, electronics, household appliances, clothing, gift cards, and even 2 silicone pregnancy bellies. Navarro also used the district-issued credit cards to fund family trips to Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, Las Vegas, and a trip to the Dominican Republic with her mother. She also spent over $9,000 on travel expenses, violating the limit set for official business-related travel. The investigation further uncovered Navarro's attempts to manipulate her ex-boyfriend by buying items for his business and installing Apple AirTags in his car to track his location. The unauthorized purchases extended to gift cards for various stores and restaurants. Navarro's actions have prompted a reassessment of the district's policies regarding the use of credit cards by school board members. Navarro has had her first court appearance and is in custody in Miami-Dade County, held on a $2 million bond as of the release of this video. If convicted, she faces a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 55 years in prison. What's really crazy about this case is how easy her actions were uncovered through basic accounting. And it's incredible that she wasn't smart enough to realize she would be caught doing things like this. We're glad someone held her accountable. Hey-o! If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay right here for our past release to find out how this guy reacted once police found him. Number 1. Daddy help! Stephanie Bloodworth, a very privileged Florida woman, because, of course, Florida, found herself in hot water after a dramatic attempt to flee from police arrest in her Tesla.
In the car, why are you doing this?
Okay, let go of your phone.
No, I'm not. My dad is on the phone, and he's...
The incident, captured on dashcam footage, went down when Stephanie was pulled over for speeding around Duck Key, a secluded island in the Florida Keys, in her high-end electric car. The situation escalated when officers suspected she might be driving under the influence. The dashcam footage showed how Bloodworth, a former student of Parsons School of Design in New York City, refused to comply with the arrest. In a fit of defiance, she told them that she owned this island as she sped away, prompting a female officer to intervene. The scene became increasingly chaotic as Bloodworth resisted arrest, kicking and screaming while sobbing on the phone with her father. As officers attempted to restrain her, she insisted they needed to speak to her father because, according to her, they were on his property.
We're just out
Can
here.
I call my father?
No.
He owns the island.
5011, you can
Okay.
release the air.
Call my father.
I'm not calling your dad.
When her father eventually arrived at the scene, he told her to calm down and acknowledged that the situation had started due to her drinking and speeding. However, He also emphasized that her actions had dug her into a deeper hole and that she would be facing consequences. Bloodworth's attempt to leverage her father's purported ownership of the island didn't sway the officers. One officer said that it wasn't how things worked and that she was a 24-year-old adult. Following the arrest, Bloodworth was taken for a sobriety evaluation, struggling to complete a breathalyzer test at the police station later that night. She was charged with resisting an officer, fleeing police, DUI, and a moving traffic violation for reckless driving. She posted bonds totaling $110,000 for resisting an officer, fleeing the police, and DUI charges. We can't help but wonder why someone purportedly so rich would risk it all instead of opting for a safer option like ordering an Uber. In the age of ride-sharing apps, attempting to drive under the influence seems like a pointless risk. Maybe, in hindsight, Bloodworth might agree that she would have only faced a DUI charge if she had taken a more conventional and responsible approach. And how about that last name, right? Bloodworth. How much is your blood worth? It's worth everything. We don't know them at all, but their name sounds like they're like the rich, scary people in movies, maybe behind the scenes doing scary things, right? They had money, or they had jobs, or they had both. Did they really need to do these crimes? Let's start it off with number 4, Breaking Bad. Danielle Stafford is a young engineer from England. She was stopped for speeding. When the police approached her, she quickly handed them several bags of, let's just call it the green stuff, and told them she wanted to come clean. Sensing something wasn't right, the cops searched her car, found more illegal things, and arrested her. On the way to jail, the officers noticed she was fidgeting with her pants, and Danielle admitted she had 11 more illegal stuff hidden down her joggers. It turned out to be 56 more bags. Stafford, cunning as she tried to be, attempted to play the victim card, hoping to fool the authorities. But her charade didn't last long. Right after she got busted, her phone went wild with incessant calls and messages related to the trade, leaving no doubt about her involvement. As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement stumbled upon a staggering 26,917-pound stash of cash hidden craftily throughout Stafford's home. That's not all. They also uncovered a treasure trove of contraband worth a jaw-dropping 33,600 pounds, laying bare the vast extent of her empire. As if that wasn't enough, a thorough search of Stafford's residence revealed a glass jar crammed with an eye-watering 17,600 pounds worth of even harder contraband. Additional evidence, including grass and pills, pointed to an intricate business run right from the comfort of her home. Danielle splurged on lavish luxuries like a swanky second home, 9 flashy watches, and not just 1 or 2, but 3 ridiculously expensive Louis Vuitton handbags. Danielle tried to explain them away by passing them off as fakes or family gifts, but her lies were swiftly dismissed by Judge Mark Burry, who saw right through her. In a stunning twist, Stafford abruptly flipped the script, surprising everyone in the courtroom by changing her pleas from denial to guilty on 4 charges. This sudden turn of events injected a fresh dose of intrigue into an already riveting case. Desperate to shift blame and save her skin, Stafford pointed fingers at a shadowy figure from Liverpool, trying to paint him as the mastermind behind her sprawling empire. But wait, there's more! Stafford had another outrageous tale to tell. She spun a wild story, insisting that her family had a strange habit of stashing wads of cash all over their house instead of trusting banks. And guess who they trusted with safeguarding all that dough? You guessed it, none other than Danielle herself. During the trial, the prosecution revealed that Stafford had evolved from a lowly cannabis peddler to a high-profile Class A dealer. Her ability to fly under the radar had allowed her to amass considerable wealth. However, her luck finally ran out, and they handed her a sobering 7.5-year prison sentence. Danielle's decision to go all Walter White is strange, since guess being an engineer meant she likely wasn't hurting for money. Maybe she should have stuck to driving trains instead, so she could get back on the right track. Number 3. The Valedictorian crime boss. Joel Ortiz was a promising college student who was high school valedictorian. He was a brilliant young man with a bright and promising future. But Ortiz had different ideas about his future, and he employed his charm and ingenuity to orchestrate audacious heists by stealing over $5 million in crypto. According to an investigation conducted by Vice Motherboard, Joel employed various techniques to gain access to his target's phones. One method was SIM swapping, a ploy where he would impersonate his victims and convince phone carriers to grant him control over their numbers. SIM swapping opened the door to a treasure trove of sensitive information, allowing Ortiz to seize control of bank accounts, social media profiles, and other digital assets. Victims would find themselves locked out of their lives, while Ortiz reveled in the spoils of his ill-gotten gains. But SIM swapping was just one weapon in Ortiz's arsenal. He delved even deeper into the realm of deception with the port-out scam. Leveraging the vulnerability of two-factor authentication, he manipulated carriers into transferring his victims' phone numbers to new devices he controlled. With access to their two-factor authentication codes, Ortiz bypassed the line of defense for his victims' online accounts. He seized control, leaving them powerless in the wake of his attacks. Each theft grew his empire, and he made a fortune in crypto. Joel Ortiz's criminal enterprise reached new heights when he set his sights on Consensus, a renowned crypto conference. With a clever mix of social engineering and technical prowess, Ortiz stole a massive amount of crypto during the event. One incident that garnered attention during Ortiz's spree involved an anonymous entrepreneur who fell victim to Joel's attacks. The man became a prime target as Ortiz manipulated carriers and executed SIM swaps to gain control of his phone number. This allowed him to bypass security measures and steal his crypto accounts. Ortiz went to great lengths to cover his tracks, but his relentless harassment of one victim's wife and daughter ultimately became his undoing. The harassment caught the attention of law enforcement, triggering a series of events that would lead to his downfall. The police began tracking down Ortiz's digital footprint. They retraced his steps, piecing together a mosaic of evidence that would bring him to justice. The breakthrough came when investigators found Ortiz's email, providing them with invaluable insights into his identity and activities. As authorities dug deeper, they discovered a series of YouTube videos that Ortiz made explaining how to use zero-day exploits. With each discovery, the police identified more victims who had fallen prey to Ortiz's schemes. Ortiz's activities reverberated throughout online communities, including platforms like OG Users. This notorious forum served as a hub for hackers and individuals engaged in illicit activities. Here, Ortiz's actions and exploits gained notoriety, further exposing the depths of his criminal endeavors. Finally, in Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, as Joel prepared to fly to an EDM festival dressed from head to toe in Gucci, the police moved in and arrested him. Ortiz's reign of cybercrime came crashing down. In the courtroom, the culmination of Ortiz's gripping saga took center stage. A plea of no contest echoed through the room. The judge broke the silence by sentencing Ortiz to 10 years in prison. Number 2. Cody Easterday's Ghost Cattle. On December 10th, 2021, Gail Easterday, a 79-year-old farmer from Pasco, Washington, veered his Dodge Ram onto a highway off-ramp, entering a confusing stretch of road. Ignoring warning signs, he drove on the ramp and collided with a vehicle driven by one of his very own delivery drivers on the interstate. The impact was immediate and devastating, resulting in the destruction of both vehicles. Easterday lost his life in the crash, leaving investigators perplexed as they sought to unravel the circumstances of the tragic accident. It was an intentionally fatal crash, and the news sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community surrounding Easterday Farms. Initially, nobody had any answers, but the devastating truth soon emerged. Gail's son Cody had orchestrated a colossal cattle fraud, selling hundreds of thousands of non-existent cows. Cody's elaborate scheme, which he saw as a lifeline for the struggling farm, quickly unraveled, leaving financial ruin. The troubles that plagued Easterday Farms were far from simple. The weight of financial burdens, mismanagement, and bad bets had pushed the farm to the brink of collapse. Suddenly thrust into the spotlight, Cody faced the daunting task of saving his family's legacy from complete ruin. The once proud community now found themselves grappling with doubt and regret, their association with the Easter Day name tarnished. Cody's plight was further complicated by his dealings with Tyson, powerful player in the cattle industry. Tyson's influence loomed large, making it an uphill battle for Cody to salvage what was left of his family's farm. Amidst the mounting challenges, a massive invoice arrived from Tyson, casting a dark cloud over Easter Day Farms. This invoice represented a staggering financial burden, exasperating the farm's already crippling debt. The sheer magnitude of this financial blow threatened to push Cody and his farm to the edge of oblivion, intensifying the obstacles he faced. Ranching itself is a complex and demanding endeavor, managing livestock, navigating unpredictable market conditions, and contending with the fickle forces of nature are all inherent complexities of the trade. Such challenges demand profound knowledge, experience, and resources to navigate successfully. Yet, the system was rigged against Cody from the start. The cattle industry's structure, with its intricate web of contracts, pricing mechanisms, and market dynamics, heavily favor corporate behemoths. The playing field was tilted, leaving farmers like Cody vulnerable to exploitation and manipulation. Despite his tireless efforts, Cody found himself pitted against overwhelming odds within this skewed system. Formula contracting emerged as a particularly insidious aspect of Cody's struggles. In this cutthroat practice, industry giants like Tyson established predetermined formulas to dictate the prices ranchers receive for their livestock. Unfortunately, these formulas overwhelmingly favored the buyers, leaving ranchers with minimal negotiating power and vulnerable to devastating financial losses. Cody had little control over the prices he received for his cattle, exasperating his financial situation. So, he decided to hedge his bets, sell more cattle now, and hopefully the price of beef would go up. Could Cody then sell what he had at hopefully a better price, which would cover the new debt he took on from the cattle he didn't have? Desperate to alleviate the mounting pressure, Cody resorted to his risk bets that only deepened the farm's financial woes. Engaging in questionable forward billing, he claimed the existence of cattle he never had to secure funds. Tyson eventually uncovered the truth, discovering that 8 lots of cattle worth a staggering $5.3 million were nothing more than vapor. Cody admitted to invoicing for non-existent cattle and even for feed that was never provided. Sadly, it was the revelation of this fraud that led to the elder Easter Day's tragic decision. The downfall of Easter Day Farms reverberated far beyond the confines of its gates, impacting employees, the local community, and the agricultural industry at large. Job security became uncertain, and the loss of this once reputable family-owned operation sent shockwaves through the local economy. Cody's story epitomized the uphill battle faced by small-scale farmers in an industry heavily skewed toward corporate giants. The repercussions of Cody's actions were immense, amounting to a staggering $244 million bilked from Tyson. He now faced the full weight of legal consequences, pleading guilty to charges of wire fraud. As Easter Day Farms grappled with severe financial strain, they were forced to sell their cherished ranch to repay their mounting debts. Cody's personal journey, following the legal proceedings, may remain shrouded in privacy, limited to those directly involved. However, it's clear that his actions and far-reaching consequences, penalties such as 20 years in prison, hefty fines, and the burden of restitution awaited him. Rebuilding his reputation and financial stability will prove to be an uphill battle as the shadows of his crimes loom large. Number 1. Spoof. TJ Fletcher is a black hat tech entrepreneur from the UK, and he ran a website called iSpoof. iSpoof was an online fraud shop and served as a haven for criminals, allowing them to scam unsuspecting victims out of over £100 million. With the assistance of iSpoof's tools, fraudsters could disguise their phone calls, making them appear as trustworthy institutions like banks, tricking innocent people into emptying their hard-earned accounts. Fletcher's exploits were undeniably lucrative, as iSpoof raked in over £3.2 million in Bitcoin. Fletcher himself walked away with the majority of Bitcoin at approximately £2 million worth of Bitcoin at the time. At its peak, iSpoof had 59,000 users, with callers armed with the website's tools, targeting up to 20 unsuspecting victims every minute. However, it was in the UK and the US where the majority of these calls hit their mark. The scale of the operation is mind-boggling, with an estimated 200,000 individuals falling victim. TJ Fletcher's criminal record only added to the severity of his actions, with 18 convictions for 36 charges. Throughout the trial, it became clear that Fletcher lacked empathy for his victims. His expressions of remorse were nothing more than a facade, driven solely by regret for being caught rather than a concern for the damage he caused. Unveiling the operation behind iSpoof was no small feat. The Metropolitan Police embarked on an investigation dedicating 700 days of work to dismantle the website and bring its architects to justice. Finally, in a November arrest, Fletcher was apprehended and he pleaded guilty to 4 charges, encompassing the creation and supply of fraudulent materials, encouragement of criminal activity, possession, and transfer of illicit funds. As the gavel struck, Judge Sally Cahill delivered a resounding message. She highlighted the experiences endured by victims and the impact it had on their lives. With the sentence totaling 13 years and 4 months, the judge sought to reflect the gravity of Fletcher's offenses. TJ Fletcher, a mastermind in his own right, displayed a remarkable level of intellect throughout his criminal career. It's evident that his capabilities extended far beyond scamming, as he possessed the mind to pursue other ventures. However, instead of using his intelligence for positive things, Fletcher made the unfortunate choice to become a scammer. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section whose music you'd rather listen to, Ice Spice or Taylor Swift.